dragging this lamb. It was just sort of pulling it across, and I thought, my God.
And just 3 strides and it had gone.
Culturally, we've been conditioned into believing there are no wild predators in New Zealand.
He said to me, "What was that?" And I looked, and my first instance was a dog, because I thought it was about that size of a Labrador dog. But then instantly I was drawn to the tail, this tubular bushy tail, which was quite long, and that wasn't a dog's tail.
Well, I was quite excited to find that someone's actually captured it on film. And although it's hard to determine the size from the photo, you can see it is filling up a walkway or a push bike track quite easily. It's definitely a very large cat.
Truck driver Chad Stewart was the last person to go public 18 months ago. He saw a big cat about 15 kilometres from the lakes as the crow flies.
Just looked like a big black cat, really. It was, it's quite long, had a big long tail.
He's convinced it was a black panther, although the last one officially in New Zealand was years ago at Auckland Zoo.
Then when I pulled up, I must have scared him out, and he shot up the hell of it, and then I just stopped and had a good look.
And the farmer who owns the land believes him. In fact, he's worried about safety.
I have got a young son that spends a lot of time fossicking around the hills and around the creek areas.
And if you think Chad Stewart was probably just seeing things, well, he's not the only one. There have been at least 3 other sightings of a similar looking cat in the same area in the past 2 years.
For the small towns dotted along the scenic Route 72 in the Canterbury foothills, talk of a large cat is more than idle pub banter. Is this the stuff of lonely fantasy, or is there something sinister out there?
This thing leapt out, and I'll tell you what, honestly, I pooped my pants.
I can only tell you what I saw. I can't tell you what it is.
Is this lurking menace simply a case of mistaken identity?
It was as big as a Labrador. The average moggie's about this big, but this thing was, so we've got to get some reference points.
I definitely believe it's, a black leopard that's been introduced to New Zealand in one way or another and escaped or let go. You'd have to be Johnny on the spot to actually see for yourself an actual kill that was made by the panther. And yes, you can 5 or 10% of stock that are put out in the spring might be missing, when it came to have a tally up in the late autumn, early winter.
Tramping enthusiast Nick Newman knows this area well, but nothing could prepare him for what he saw in June 2006.
I guess I've been coming here for 10 or 15 years, I suppose, and I'd walk it at least once a year. I make a point of at least doing the whole walkway once a year. It was a day just like this, and I'd actually seen a falcon which was sitting on a tree really close to me, and I stopped about 10 metres away, and I was thinking, this is amazing, I'm only 10 metres away from a falcon, it's sitting on a tree. And then the falcon just moved off, and I looked down, and out of the corner of my eye I saw a movement, and there was a cat which was loping away across the tussock, and I was really surprised that it wasn't at all frightened by me, and as it was loping I could see the size of it, and it had a really big sort of boxy square head and really strong shoulders, and it was just loping gently away, but it was going up and over the tussocks. It would have been about, I would say, nose to tail, something like that. Yeah, but it was more the sort of the bulk of it that was the thing which struck me, than more how powerful it was.
Cats by nature hunt at night. However, in winter, when food is scarce, a large cat may be forced to hunt or scavenge during the day. All sightings reported in Canterbury have occurred during winter and in daylight.
And it was just dragging this lamb. It was just sort of pulling it across, and I thought, my God. It must have been really strong, because the mother was beating it at the same time. But it was very long and it was low as it was going along, and it was very long, and as it jumped the fence you could actually see, how big and long it was.
Our sighting, we didn't so much see the front part of the cat. We were too far away. People have asked us, did it have feline, face? We couldn't determine that, and that wasn't what caught our attention. It was really the motion of it moving, the tail unfolding, and just the length and bushiness of the tail, quite tubular. Not like a dog's tail, not straight and skinny.
It didn't move like a dog, it moved like a cat.
It's not a dog, it was a cat.
It's just beautiful movement, and just 3 strides and it had gone.
The rugged mid-Canterbury backcountry is Al Kirch's office. Al is an expert in locating animals for clients that he guides through the region. While guiding an American client in 2006, Al spotted an animal on an opposing ridge that was unlike anything he had seen before.
We've come up here guiding with a client, Larry Ort, and we've been hunting from the far end, came along the top ridge, spent some time glassing down for goats, and hadn't really found anything, so we just kept quietly looking along, and it got to about lunchtime. And we got to the scrubby section over here, and we'd been sitting there for about 10 minutes eating lunch and looking down, and cat walked across the plateau that was the green plateau at the top of the White Bluffs over here. We were pretty much almost on the skyline looking down, and I ran down the skyline into the scrub to take the photo. I'm paid to look at animals, so yes, if an ordinary sized cat had walked through, I probably would have picked that up as well, because we're frequently spotting rabbits and hares at 1 kilometre, 2 kilometres. So to see a cat is not a problem. What struck me with this one was the size of it.
Yeah, that one I've seen numerous photographs, and some I've been a little bit unsure of, but that particular one I thought looked like, to me it looked like a big cat. The nature of the animal, the way it was out walking very, very confidently on a good track, out in the open. That's normally you've got to be a big confident animal to walk like that, the way it was holding its tail, and it had that nice big round head that most of these larger cats have.
With lingering doubt about the size of the cat and a desire to set the story straight, Al returns to the original site, armed with a tape measure.
This is the bush that probably features most prominently with the cat in front of it. The cat walked past the track here and was only about 1 metre away from the bush. 1.5 metres maybe. So this may give us a better idea of the size of the cat. And in the photo, if I can remember correctly, there was a definite separation between these 2 bushes. So if we go the outside of this Madagascar bush here into the other green one over there, that's just over 1 metre across at that point. So that's probably going to be one of our better reference points for the size of the cat.
According to Al's measurements, this would make the cat in his photograph 1.5 metres long. To put that in perspective, your average moggy is only half that.
There are variants in the size of these cats, as I've said in the magazine article. When most of us think about a leopard or a mountain lion, but leopard's probably the best example, we think of the African leopard, which is a reasonable sized cat. It's a very, very big cat. But on the other hand, you know, some of these sightings may be juveniles, in other words, partly grown, which is why they might resemble more of a bigger than a house cat but smaller than a leopard sort of look. They can also be a different species of leopard. Some of the Asian leopards are only 30 kilos in size, which is the size of an Alsatian dog.
And we're all together, so we're probably only about this far apart, really. Another guy in front of us. And just swung the rifles around and yeah, he's this fucking big cat. So it was something different.
I got in first and asked him what he'd seen, what its colours were like, how it moved, and its overall appearance. And everything he described to me was exactly what I'd think a cougar would be. After a couple of weeks, I produced this magazine, showed it to Howard, showed him this photograph here, and he looked at it for maybe 10 or 15 seconds and said, "That's the animal I saw, but maybe not as big."
Because that's a big cat. So I'd say the ones that we would have looked at, or what we saw, would have been probably the height of this dog, wouldn't it? Because it's about knee height on him, so he maybe a bit taller than that, but whack two of those dogs together and you can sort of understand what we saw.
I could remember an article that appeared in the local newspapers, in Christchurch papers, that somebody wanted to introduce cougars into the foothills of Canterbury to eradicate the deer. And the talk about it went on for some time in the paper, the pros and cons of actually introducing it. Most people that had any idea of controlling the wildlife thought it was just a joke, considering what the animals that cause all the trouble that have been caused by other introduced things. Why would they want to hunt deer when there was all the lambs and everything else, domestic animals that they could hunt?
If it was a feral cat, it was the Arnold Schwarzenegger of fucking feral cat. It was big.
People, men in particular, are very bad at overestimating the size of things. They want things to look bigger than they are, and they see things as bigger than they are. It's very easy to mistake a cat, which might be, say, knee height or below at a distance, for something that's a panther, which actually should be about hip height. Well, Vladimir here is about the size of a small house cat. They'd come up standing at the shoulder to about knee height, slightly below. Boris, a bit bigger perhaps, but if you're talking about a black panther, you're talking about something that should stand at hip height. That is a big cat.
One of the questions and queries that a lot of skeptics have put forward to some of the sightings of the large black cats in Australia and New Zealand is that people have a lot of difficulty judging distances and sizes, and that's quite apt, but we just don't believe that all the cats are being misperceived, and we just don't think they're just all domestic cats suddenly perceived as leopards or panthers. Though I believe just in the New Zealand case, I think a lot of them are these bizarro monster exotic Felis catus.
I think if you're a professional skeptic, then I don't think you're actually, it doesn't really matter what the actual content of the question is, whether it's a Loch Ness Monster, ESP goats, whatever. You're arguing about the primacy of things like the scientific method for proving it. My concern has always been with that type of position is that you run the risk of kind of skeptical fundamentalism, you know, that there is no evidence for something, therefore it cannot exist. I think that a more reasoned position that I prefer to see is one that says we don't have enough evidence upon which to base a conclusion that something exists.
Really, we have to go a lot deeper than that, and you can't just write off these things on the basis that, well, hey, I'm a skeptic, so, you know, it's my job to ask the tough questions. Well, that's good, ask the tough questions, but there's, you know, generally the simplest answer usually turns out to be the real one. And the simplest answer is you have a bunch of people, credible people, who've seen cats, and let's face it, we've all seen house cats. We all know how big they are, and we all know what they look like and how they sound and what they do. But there are people here and across the Tasman who have seen leopard and cougar-sized cats.
For every big cat sighting, there is the inevitable question. How could an exotic cat be at large in the wild of New Zealand?
One gentleman actually wrote a letter to the editor in the magazine pointing out that when he was a 15-year-old in the Bay of Plenty, he shot and killed an extremely large black menacing cat that was later identified apparently by the National Museum in Wellington as a leopard, a black leopard, and this was back in the late 40s, early 50s, as I recall off the top of my head. And the general consensus of opinion back then was that it was a a World War II mascot that had been left behind by some American troops stationed in the area.
And then the old guy with the zoo down in New Brighton, and he only died 2 years ago, that chap. It'd be 2 years back that he died. His cat disappeared under public pressure. I think he let it go. Because the crocodile, I think they put it down. I think he was stuffed, wasn't he? Then there was old man Harris, who had that small circus, and he had 2 mountain cats, puma cats, looking like cats. They disappeared. So where would they head? Going out of the city straight to the hills, wouldn't they?
If the suggestion of escaped cats sounds a little far-fetched, consider that in 1978, 2 lions broke free from a circus in Lawrence. They were subsequently shot, stuffed, and stashed upstairs in the animal attic at Otago Museum.
Well, I thought if we could possibly catch this thing, that would be really interesting, and I might get a bit of money out of it. So what we did, we modified a dog trap, made it longer, and the idea was that the panther would be attracted by the goat calling out, because you're probably well aware you can hear a goat calling from 500 or 600 metres, no trouble at all. So we used to come out and feed the goat baleage and lucerne hay and water, and it was well looked after, probably looked after better than any other goat around.
The cat may not have taken the bait, but just over the ridge in nearby Staveley, it made its presence felt.
So I was coming down to my workshop and I jumped over this little ditch here on the way down, and I was about to step down and I saw some quite large prints just on the ground here. One here and one there. And they were kind of large and a long way apart, so it made me do a double take. I thought the neighbour's dog had been up, but on a closer inspection they were kind of too big and didn't appear to have a claw at the end of the print. And thought they looked rather large, so I went back and got the digital camera to take a photo.
Prints measuring 10 centimetres across the paw might appear strange in New Zealand, but across the ditch in Australia, they are a common phenomenon.
Is there a chance that the things that we're seeing here and over there is just due to mutated Felis catus? Yes, of course. We believe a lot of the animals being seen and reported as panthers and leopards are just, using the term loosely, monstrous Felis catus. We're talking 30, 35 kilo plus.
Skeptics argue that without tangible evidence, there is unlikely to be a big cat. However, a chance discovery in Mount Somers may finally put the mystery to rest.
I came to this spot and looked down and saw where the hay shed was and where the black cat was last seen, and where it might have walked up this up through the tussocks. And I looked down on the top barb and saw a tuft of black hair, and thought this was very strange. Well, perhaps it was from the cat. So I mean, it could be something else. It could be something quite simple, but it seemed too much of a coincidence to find a tuft of black hair in this exact spot. And I don't think you'd find a tuft of black hair necessarily on any of the top barbs around the farm.
When the hair sample was first tested by MAF, they were able to rule out horse, cow, or possum hair, but couldn't confirm or deny that it was a cat. Improved DNA testing offers the possibility the remaining strands will yield enough positive DNA to solve this mystery.
The evidence, again, just seems overwhelming. I look at all these people who are telling us their stories and the sort of things they're telling us, and it all fits with what we know about big cats. And when you look at it objectively and you stand back and you say, well, okay, New Zealand's a big country. It is loaded with sheep and cattle and goats and possums and plenty of prey for these things to eat. They need never see a human in terms of bothering one, because there's no competition at that end of the food chain. 60 million sheep, who's going to notice if 1,000 die each year due to wildcat predation?
Unfortunately, This vital piece of evidence presented a problem. The root containing the vital DNA was missing. The test once again proved inconclusive. This then is not where the story ends. With all the positive leads, we can be sure there is something big, black and feline living in the New Zealand backcountry.
I think it's one of those things I wouldn't send my kids out camping in the Mackenzie country with a tent. But I guess it's a, you know, they're here, or they seem to be here.
Until the cat is caught or shot, it will remain an element of folklore, not folk lies.
We all agree what we saw, and the story's never changed. We never made it, you know, 6 foot fucking tall and 3 metres long. It's never got any bigger, so we've never changed their story from the first day we saw it. We all agree what we saw.
Photos, prints and hair samples are important clues, but catching or killing the cat is conclusive.
I guess I don't have to wonder, is there a black cat that big? I mean, I know that there is. I don't know what it is, I don't know what breed it is, but I did see it, I do know it's there. If I hadn't seen it, I would not find it believable.
We're the lucky ones, we don't have to waste time wondering.
We don't have to wonder.
Its stealth-like nature both fascinates and frustrates.
I think what we've got quite a few mountain cats. That's what I would call them.
With fresh sightings reported each winter, it might only be a matter of time before cat country yields more than prints of darkness.
Black cat in the dead of the night. Yellow eyes, you got a terrible fright. Crept up on you from behind. He is the Prince of Darkness. Full moon, you run away. No one believes a word you say. A black cat, he's gone by day. He is the Prince of Darkness. Skulking in shadows, too graceful to see. Black is the depths of your mind that you can't see.
The main problem with cats is for little children and elderly people, so if you keep away from children and elderly people, you're pretty safe.